So, Madam Speaker, I've written down a couple of things really quickly about what Donald Trump said last night, and I'm curious what the response should be from our elected leaders, especially governors in affected states. He told violent white supremacists and anti-Semites to stand by. Trump and his family called for armies of people to crowd voting locations. And then he said last night he wanted to add to the Supreme Court, so we'll have one more vote. Of course, that would be for efforts to block Americans' votes from being counted. What should our public elected officials do, whether they're in Congress or whether you're the governor of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina? What should they be doing to prepare for this onslaught, this challenge to the counting of every vote?
Well, let us hope that it really does not materialize. You know, there are three stages. I don't have to tell you, 2 elections, the period leading up, and that's the period in which we also have early voting, what happens on Election Day, and that's the cautionary warning that you are giving us, and then what happens after in the counting of the votes. The integrity of our elections must be maintained, Democratic or Republican. The result will be respected, but Republican and Democratic governors throughout the country, I don't know what real role that they have unless we're talking about just stopping the violence that the president is trying to invoke. But I do know that he is intimidating people, and that is really an argument for people to vote by mail, vote early, vote by mail. Don't be intimidated by going to the polling places and see people who look like ICE agents or law enforcement or something who might follow you home to see, you know, if you have a mixed status home or something like that. This is so. We've never seen anything like this before. But then again, we've never had a president before who disregarded all that the Constitution says about guardrails and the rest, a person who was just a rogue president of the United States, and it's most unfortunate. But let's nonetheless be prayerful that somebody will intervene today and say, you just tipped the scale too far. One of my prayers is that the Republicans will take back their party. The country needs a strong Republican Party that's done so much for our country. And to have it be hijacked as a cult at this time is really a sad thing for America, also as it gives credence to white supremacists. And there are people who vote for Trump because they're pro-life, and I respect that position. I come from a family oriented that way. But it shouldn't be a position that says it's okay to take babies out of the hands of their moms. It shouldn't be to give him license to do all the things that he's doing. And again, you talk about the court. The day that Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, Justice Ginsburg passed away, 10 states were already voting that day. So the election was on. The election was on. And again, that didn't seem to matter to him because he wanted to rush the decision so that he could overturn your pre-existing condition benefit. People should know that this is about them. It's about them. The Affordable Care Act, being a woman, no longer a pre-existing medical condition, the list goes on, but the pre-existing medical condition, the preventive care and free annual checkups that mean a lot to the prevention, to the health care, to the financial health of the American people. So it all comes back to what it means to them. But there's absolutely no question that what you say is so, that he wants to cause chaos, take it to the courts. When he takes it to the courts, prolong the process so that there would not be a majority of the Electoral College by the December assigned date. And that's when he starts talking about, well, I'll take it to the House of Representatives. What is this? What is this about the Republicans, that they don't care enough about what they believe in as a party, a legitimate party with beliefs and their view of the role of government? And we know you and I have had that debate ourselves in Congress, Joe, but it's existed since the beginning of our country. So I pray that they would get us a grand old party again. What they say to me, not the ones in Congress, because they're fully wedded to Trump. Because any issue you can name, they're there with Trump. Name any issue. name immigration and gun safety, a woman's right to choose, LGBTQ, fairness in our economy, denial on the climate and the rest of that. That's all who they've been longer than Trump. He's their guy. So from a philosophical policy standpoint, he's their guy. But from a decency standpoint, that's not who the Republican Party in this country is. And I'm proud of people like Tom Ridge and others who have come forward to separate themselves from this version of what is the Republican Party in the White House.
Hard to see Republicans intervening at this point after they haven't for 4 years.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.